Hi, this is Apocalypse Queen Radio with author A.R. Shaw, and I'm here today. And like always, we have technical difficulties with author Glen Tate and Shelby Gallagher. This is a copyrighted podcast solely owned by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. Shelby is here with me right now, and we're trying to get Glen to connect or trade off as it goes. We'll see how it works. Let's see. Shelby, I read your book, The Divide, and I was super impressed.
Thank you.
It's incredible. Tell me about the book and what it's like to publish your first book. What's your journey been like?
The journey's been interesting, and yes, Glen Tate is here in the room with me right now, so I might have to hand the headphones to him. Yes, everyone's saying hi to you. Yes, technical difficulties, but yeah, it started out, I had my own, I think you probably can relate to this, my own kind of personal inspiration for wanting to sit down and write, and that was about, gosh, it's coming up on 2 years now, what started it for me in a couple ways was that you'll remember 2 years ago, it was before the presidential election, and it was tense. It was really tense, and the media was a flurry. And living in Oregon, all around me, a lot of unrest. It's a very deep blue state, and as the election came and there was riots, there was very violent riots right after, made national news. And Portland is known, especially Portland is known for its riots. And it was scary. And as someone who's a prepper, that's you sit there and ask, when do you bug out? At what point do you leave? Do you find safety? At the same time that was happening, the place that I would bug out to, Family Cabin in Colorado, the place actually exists. So if you've read the book, you know what that cabin I described in the book. That cabin was sold. So this unrest is happening around me, and the place that I would normally go, that I'd planned on and prepared for, is gone. So there was a lot of angst in my soul about what to do if I needed to leave or get out of Portland, because it was very scary for about a week or so there. It was pretty hats off to the police for doing what they did and trying to deal with what they had to do. So there was that was going on at the time. That's what really got me to the laptop to write. But I've always felt like I've always been, and I joke about this, I talk about this in my book, couponing. I've always been that way. I've been that way for a long time. And I started out as a couponer, like most people, just trying to save money. But one of the foundational parts of couponing is to stockpile. Buy a ton of those things that you get super, super, super discounted and save them. And that lends itself so well to prepping. So that's where so those two things were kind of what got me started.
Right. Well, you're absolutely excellent. The one suggestion I would have with our technical difficulties, folks, is that if you have a mic on your computer, and you take out that jack, we might be able to hear both of you talk, if that works out. Anyway, you might want to give it a try.
Okay.
Some point. Anyway,
I'll tell Glen that. Thank you.
Yeah. So already we have George Vargas, our fans. I believe he's one of your wonderful fans. Cecilia Gilbert, Saigon. Can you see these people on the right side? Chime in. So if you see them over here on the right side of your screen, maybe, if you see them, they'll ask questions. If not, I will post the questions and we can talk. So this is very fan oriented. If you guys have any questions for Shelby or Glen Tate, please ask them and I'll pass them along. Let's see, I did read the book, absolutely loved it. I also started reading Glen's, and I can't believe I've only just now gotten his. I know that's terrible. We all have, we're writing books at the same time, and it's hard to write and do write whenever you also write in the genre. You don't like to really read in the genre. Right now I'm doing something that's a little more thriller. So that kind of works.
Good.
But it's, I actually lived in Washington State myself on the Spokane side. And so I've heard of and knew of Glen Tate, but I've lived on the other side of the state, and then in Idaho as well. One of the things you talk about in your book is this trip you took from Oregon up through Idaho and then up into Colorado, down into Colorado. And I've actually taken this trip myself by myself in February, a couple winters ago, on a book research project. I was going to an old Trident missile silo area. And that is an epic trip. And one of the things that you pointed out was being able to write down those gas exits. Never thought of that, but that is important if you have, if this is your goal and this is your mission in life, is to know where those exits are, because in a crisis you're not gonna meet those benchmarks. And there are two specific spots along that trek that it's one gas station to the next with one tank of gas. There are no other options in between, and that's on a perfect day. So
that's without a collapse. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's good to make those trips and to write those down. So your book was just absolutely chock full of a ton of practical information, but it was also well written. And I always like to highlight what I consider really great lines. So one of your lines, let me see if I can find it here. This I thought was fantastic. Ned's phone rang. It was an old 80s landline, beige with a curled cord that had faded after a couple of decades in the sun. You're not telling people Ned had an old landline phone, you should do this too. Right. You were using an inanimate object and you were describing it in a very well thought out way, and that's called showing instead of telling. That was excellent writing. I thought.
Thank you. And we've all the thing is, we've all seen phones like that. We've all been in the homes of our whoever family members that have those. So good. Yeah,
it puts you right there. Everyone has, our age anyway, we've all kind of seen, we know, I don't know that our kids would recognize what that is anymore.
No.
But we have,
Yeah.
That's really cool. And then let's see. Glenn, I'm sorry, I know you're there. I just want to say hi, and sorry we're having these problems. We might have to have them separately.
Here, let me hand the headphones to him. Here he goes.
Okay.
Hello, thank you for your patience.
Glenn.
Hi there, how are you?
Of course, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, just doing very, very well. Very glad to be here.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. It's always something. It's always something new, but
That's right.
It's always something. So I don't know if you can hear the conversation I'm having with Shelby, but we're talking about her book and how she came to writing. What were the events that led up to her writing The Divide? And I've known of you for years, and I lived in Washington State, but we've never actually met. And now I live in a completely different state on the east side of the country. I'm not going to say where, but
wise.
Yeah. So anyway, what got you to writing? I mean, I've started reading your book, and I'm so sorry I've never picked it up before. We have so many great writer friends. Yeah. So what was it that got you to writing? I kind of know the answer to this, but why don't you say it in your own words?
Yes, the Easter Bunny. And every time I answer that question that way, everyone thinks that you've booked a complete lunatic on your show and that I'm on drugs or something weird. But no, it was the Easter Bunny, sort of. And the reason I say that is I started prepping in 2008, 2009. I think I was like many, many others. I think it's actually the norm for people to have been prepping at that point in time. Obviously, the Obama administration comes in. The economy had tanked. I mean, we'll look back at this idea that this was the, quote, Great Recession is silly. It was a depression, and it only recently ended, I believe. But anyway, so there's all kinds of upheaval, and it's the perfect time to say, oh my goodness, my whole life I've been depending on all these systems, and now everything I thought I could take for granted is now no longer something I can take for granted. As a minor factor in all of that is also the fact that I live in an extremely liberal part of the country, and when I saw the Obama revolution, I pretty quickly concluded, for the first time really, that there were a bunch of people out there that really didn't want people like me around. I don't mean anything crazy or weird. No one's going to put me in a camp or anything crazy. It just felt very, very different politically. And I'm a political person and think that way. And I could see, oh my goodness, things have really changed. That's my point with that. Started prepping, met extreme resistance from my wife. And that's where the Easter Bunny story comes in, because I started doing what I do, which is I get onto something and I get it done, and I work very hard at it, and and my focus was prepping. So doggone it, there were ammo cans, there were food tubs, there were all the normal stuff that everybody, was doing, especially in that time period, 10-ish years ago. And I realized that I had to have an explanation for my wife for why, once there was an event of some kind, I stored all my stuff in an offsite storage place, but my plan was to bug in. This is before I had the cabin. So I had to have an explanation for why suddenly, when an event occurred, there would be a garage full of stuff she'd never thought of before. I mean, green square cans with handles that are really heavy and things like that. Like, what's that? So I came up with the Easter Bunny story. Yes, I actually am connecting these thoughts here and not leaving people hanging. So my idea was, instead of telling her, I'm right, you're wrong, she's a doctor and all those stereotypes about their personalities are true, it wouldn't go over very well for me to say, I'm right, you're wrong. So I had to come up with a face-saving way to explain where all this stuff came from. You guessed it, the Easter Bunny. That's the best I could do, by the way. That's a pretty terrible solution to that problem. But I was going to tell her, the Easter Bunny brought this stuff. Just be cool with it. Everything will be fine. Here's the stuff. Here's why. I got it. Here's what it's for. And I realized that the Easter Bunny speech was the perfect explanation of why I prepped, why people should prep, and what needs to be done. And I thought, well, I've never written, by the way, anything ever in my life. I'm a lawyer. I write legal briefs. That's such a different kind of writing. It doesn't even count. I, up to that point, didn't even read fiction books. I was so busy with my life that I never read fiction. And I remember, I didn't even know if, you'll love this, by the way, if the commas go inside the quote marks or not in fiction. Because I know how they go in legal briefs, but I didn't even know. I know. So I went and I grabbed a fiction book in my house and looked and said, oh, they go inside. Okay, that makes sense. That's the same thing. But so I'm at that point wasn't a writer, especially a fiction writer. So I realized that this Easter Bunny speech would be a neat little chapter. And I was going to put it up on a forum, Jack Spirko's Survival, the Survival Podcast Forum, very, very, widely read. And so I thought, oh, this will be neat. This will help some people out. And then that chapter, that little short story, became a couple chapters. And you know where this is headed, right? Because you're a prolific writer. And then the few chapters, I thought, well, I have to explain why I'm like I am and why I think bad things coming. I had to explain all this stuff. And pretty soon, without even intending, a book sort of formed up. And I thought, well, this is crazy. And then all these people that I'd met in my life, The Team Is Real, for example, all these people that I never really thought of in sort of any linear story fashion. They were just people I knew that happened to be really interesting people. I saw all these connections about how this would be an amazing story and explain things and inform people and inspire people and get people prepping and save lives. So I thought, oh, this is probably a good thing to do. And I can't even emphasize enough, I had no plans whatsoever to ever be a writer. So, and this is another part you'll love as a writer. I just sort of sat down and wrote 4,000 pages and then decided maybe I should try to get it published. I didn't do one book and then try to do more. Yeah, and I laugh now because it's like the dumbest thing ever that I thought that was a good idea. But and
you're on book 10 now, right?
Yeah, book 10 is done. And
wow.
Yeah, and that's why I say 4,000. Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it was a great experience to do it. And I just kept writing and writing and writing. I couldn't stop. And then it was published, and I was the most surprised of anybody. I didn't intend to do this. Again, I don't think of myself as a writer. I guess I am now, but anyway, and that's how it came about. So yes, to come full circle, the Easter Bunny.
Okay. Well, we have a couple of guests who have. I've heard you, I think, in a podcast say or explain this that way. We all have those catalysts that drive us to it. My son actually went to Western Washington University.
Oh yes, beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, right up in Bellingham, and at the time I lived in Liberty Lake, Washington, right outside of Spokane.
Also a beautiful place.
Right, I'm from South Texas, and you prep for things for hurricanes and natural disasters, those kinds of things. But sending him off to college, suddenly I was like, how's he going to get home if something were to happen? You know, I mean, it was one of those things. That's where my first novel came from. But yeah, we all have these little catalysts. How would you get from point A to point B? And, you know, crises will happen and it gets your mind thinking. So it's pretty cool. So you have Joe Avery says, love your books down here in Florida.
I believe I saw that come up, and that was when Shelby was on. So I believe he's talking about Shelby. I cannot take credit for that.
Cool. Okay, and then Cecilia Gilbert Saigon says, love your books, Glenn. I have family that lives in Forks and Port Angeles. I know both of those places. So you are from Forks, right?
Yes.
I don't know if I should have asked you that or not. Sorry.
No, it's in the books.
Yes.
Rural Western Washington, and Forks is just like many other places in rural Western Washington. We're not talking about Seattle and the suburbs. We're talking about, where people have chainsaws in their pickups kind of place.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Let's see. I've had relatives live in Lacey near Olympia. Uh-huh. Yeah. So I've stomped around there quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
The whole area. Yeah. And all my children were actually born in Bremerton, Washington, in Kitsap County.
Sure.
So yeah. That whole area. Anyway, let's see. I do have questions for you guys. Can Shelby hear me or no? Is that
no,
right?
She can't. Let me pass the headset to her.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Thank you, Glen. We'll be right back. Hi, Shelby. Okay, hello. So we're back to you, and we'll ask you some questions. So there was another thing that you wrote about that I thought was very intriguing, and I need to tell Glen that I'm sorry I haven't read his because I don't have quite the quality of questions that I would have normally. But if fans have questions, please ask them.
Yes.
Okay, so so you tracked all those exits. Let's see, there was another question here. So people, you pointed out something pretty cool in the novel, that people who will turn into savages in a crisis is what you said. And she thought about that and what happened in Bosnia and Venezuela. I have relatives from Venezuela, total crisis. People would kill even for toilet paper. That's very true. And these are things that society today needs to witness and watch, because I know that, I have my stepmom's mom still lives in Venezuela, and they send her sugar. They send her stuff hoping that she'll get supplies. It's quite an issue. And as Americans, we don't get that. We just don't understand it, but that could easily happen here.
It can, and if you follow me on social media, I talk about this a lot, because collapses can happen in so many different ways. There's natural disasters, there's economic, there's political, economic, there's all those. Venezuela, I never say it right. I can never pronounce it right. Is definitely a political, economic collapse. But there's the natural disasters, to me, that we see happen. Last year it was Hurricane Maria, I believe it was, that hit Houston. The other one that hit Puerto Rico. You can see what happens. Watch what happens. Watch the media afterwards. The looting that happens, the corruption, unfortunately, in Puerto Rico, that's making it worse. And unfortunately, we're about to see it in Florida and South Carolina, it sounds like. So I pay attention to these things, and probably a little bit too obsessively, because not only do I want to learn prepping from it, I want to learn the human behavior that comes from it. Because what will happen is the looting that will happen. police resources to take care of such things will be limited, if not completely taxed. And we as preppers and we as we are responsible for all of our safety and our food supply and how we get taken care of. FEMA is not going to be able to help you in those immediate first 48 hours to a week after such a natural disaster. So I watch those because I'm watching for those very things. So yeah. Oh, and Jorge there. I just saw what he just said. Yeah.
Yes.
Good. God bless you. Seriously.
That's right. And can you ask Glenn the question? Can Glenn answer Joe Avery's question?
Joe Avery is
asking. Up to him to answer that.
Right here. I'm going to hand this to him while he's reading the questions because we can see it. 1 second, Joe.
And just for the listeners, they're passing back and forth a microphone. It's just technology is not great. But anyway, Joe Avery asked, I found that wild and crazy guy Glen long before Shelby. So Glen, do you still practice law in Olympia?
I practice law in Western Washington.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Olympia is not its own. It's just a city. But yeah, so he practices in Western Washington still. And do you enjoy that? Is it better today than it used to be?
Yes, for me.
Okay.
Practicing law, I'm very comfortable with myself. I'm not trying to live in a liberal, progressive, statist world as somebody who doesn't believe in that stuff. It was hard to do in the past, and now I have the only pickup truck in the parking lot where I work, right? And I'm just myself, and so it's easier in that sense. I've also become relatively experienced in what I do, and I just focus on very, very narrow issues because it's the only way that you can be, up to speed on things, basically. And so I don't try to do very many types of law. And so it's comfortable in that sense because I know my little universe and don't try to know the rest of the universe. So yes, it's I enjoy it quite a bit. I get to fight bullies. That's what I do all day long. I fight bullies, usually government agencies, and that's very, very satisfying because it's hard to do, but often we get good results for the right people and we stop bad behavior, and that's what I live for. And
can you say what type of law you practice? Is that
basically, suing the government, litigation against government agencies.
Okay.
I don't do the normal stuff that people actually need. I don't know anything practical. I don't know family law. I don't know wills. I don't know all the stuff that people actually need. Yeah, I'm not your guy.
Yeah. So don't go to Glen Tate for anything other than just let him do his thing. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you work in a writing life and also be an attorney? How do you do that?
Great question. When I was writing the books, and that was several years ago, I would get up at, 3 or 4 in the morning. And this wasn't because I set my alarm clock and this was my job. And I said, oh, geez, I couldn't sleep. I would spring out of bed at 3 in the morning and I would say, oh my goodness, here's the part about Special Forces Ted and that thing he said to Powell that one time. And I would just run with it. And I couldn't stop myself. My record was getting up at 1:15 in the morning. I remember looking at the clock saying, this is really out of hand, but I have some writing to do. So I'd write in the, What's that?
Yeah. Did you dream about your characters, and you couldn't wait to get up?
I don't remember dreaming about the characters, but I remember I had all these little sheets of scrap paper at the gym where I would work out because I'd write for several hours in the morning and then I'd go work out, and the thought process, I'm sure you can relate to this, the thought process wouldn't stop. And so they had these little golf pencils and these little sheets of paper, and I actually have 3 or 4 gallon Ziploc bags of all the little sheets of paper where I'd come up with ideas, I come up with quotes, storylines, I do little pictures of how the timelines flowed. I can't say it enough. I could not stop thinking about this and writing it. I believe, and I won't be religious because that not everybody appreciates that. I believe God was getting a story out via me. I think of myself as the guy at the keyboard because of a lot of things that I could, just all the so-called, coincidences, and the fact that it was published and I'd never written before, the fact that there were all these amazing people that are real people in my life that string together in this perfect story. I don't think I have that kind of talent. And I also think the message that was conveyed was something that God would want to be conveyed. And that's be decent to people. When there's a collapse, don't go on a killing spree. There's going to be a rebuilding. There's going to be life after a collapse. There will be accountability after a collapse. There'll be reunification and I don't know, we'll have to all get along after this. And so that if you go and commit a bunch of crimes and it's, Bosnia, and you've got blood feuds that are going to go on for hundreds of years now, that's just terrible. Don't do that. So I'm pretty sure that God wanted me to write this. If I'm wrong, okay. I wrote it and some people have benefited from it. So that's good in and of itself. So it doesn't, if you're not religious, it doesn't have to have a religious meaning. But if you are religious, like I am, I think it's crystal clear that it has a religious meaning.
What has been one of your most rewarding experiences as an author?
Oh my goodness.
You go around to a lot of that, I was asked to go to one event in Washington that you were speaking at. Could have met you then, but I couldn't do it at the time. Mm-hmm. But that was really cool. So I know that you do those things, and that is really cool to meet your fans, and go out and do.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There have been so many rewarding experiences. The category of rewarding experiences that come to mind have to be usually the emails, but the communications I receive from readers where they describe to me how the books have improved their lives. I have several emails from people in which their marriages were very much improved, because usually I find this to be very common. There's one spouse who's gung-ho about prepping and another spouse who isn't. It's usually the man who's very gung-ho about it and the woman who's not, although certainly not universal. And the books explain why people should prep, and it's not from the angle of, when I retired from SEAL Team 6, okay, I've never been in the military. I'm not cool, right? I'm not that guy. And so it's very normal and believable. And so it's a great book to hand to a reluctant spouse or somebody who doesn't want to prep, because it's normal people that happen to be prepping. And so it's persuasive is my point. And to hear the stories, I'm getting goosebumps. This always happens when I think about this. Improved marriages. A lot of people have told me that their faith in God has been strengthened because of this, which is obviously enormously satisfying to me, given my beliefs. And those are the main things. It's the individual effects that the books have had on people that I really think about. And there are all kinds of other neat things, getting to speak to people. I mean, I can't believe people want to hear what I have to think about things. I mean, it's great, and I'm happy to tell them, but it's an honor. And you can relate to this, and Shelby and I have spoken about it, and she can relate to this too. People's time is valuable. And when they want to spend their time listening about what your thoughts are, it's an honor. It's an absolute honor. You're being given something by these people, and that is their time. And so I always think of that. I've met, aside from the people I knew, that were the focus of the book, after the books, I've met some absolutely amazing people I would have never met without the books. And that has been really, really spectacular. So I would say that the great impacts, the great benefits of this book have been how it's affected other people. I'm still secretly myself with my real name, because of course Glen Tate's a fake name. So I look at it this way: Glen Tate, this person that isn't me, gets, if Glen Tate gets some glory, that's awesome, because I don't want or need that. I want people to be affected by all this stuff. So that's worked out well. So yeah, great question.
Yeah. One of the, before you pass it back off to Shelby, I wanted to ask, what would you do if you didn't write anymore? and you didn't practice law, is there something else that you would do with your time?
What a great question.
I asked
Yeah.
Now that you know what you know writing, I guess I should have put it that way. Now that you know
Yeah.
what you know writing, what would you do?
Well, that assumes that I would have unlimited time and money, which is always kind of a fun thing to think about. If I weren't practicing law or writing books and I could make a living of it, homesteading. I've learned so many things. I've learned about gardens and all kinds of things. Wiring, for goodness sakes, I didn't know any of that stuff. I would love to homestead, and not in a very harsh and austere way. I'm not really interested in that, but being a little bit more self-sufficient, having some solar power, all those sorts of things would be neat. As far as a traditional vocation, what's that? I'm sorry.
I said it's challenging, and it's I want to say it's a little bit romantic. I mean, I read that's, let me see if I can grab it off my shelf. I read a lot of books about homes. John Seymour's Self-Sufficient Life. I don't know if readers can see that. It's like it's a romantic book. You look at these things and it tells you how to do everything. I mean, it seems ideal, you know. So yeah,
Well,
if you didn't have to make a major living, homesteading is really a cool thing to do.
Well, you said something interesting. You said that it seems like an ideal to homestead, and I understand what you're saying. But I have found that since I'm no longer the suburban couch potato guy that I was, and I've learned all these new things, and I by no means know a fraction of what my grandpa knew, for example, about I'll just how to live on a farm or something like that. But the few things I've learned have really whet my appetite for learning more things. And so I've seen that little taste of it is something I really, really like. And so that to me is different than the ideal of being entirely self-sufficient, because I'm a realist. And also I like showers, and I like nachos. I mean, come on, who doesn't like nachos? So any world in which I can't have nachos is not a world I want to be part of if I can help it.
No one wants to live in a world with me with cold showers.
Yeah.
Never going to happen. So Joe Avery says, you can be humble and still be used of that outer thought.
Yeah, and I think he means the outside thought, and that's okay. And the outside thought was a recurring thing in the books and that was a pretty obvious euphemism for God talking to me. So I think that's what he means, and I appreciate what he's saying.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Okay, I want to share time with Shelby. I'm sorry, is that okay? Can you pass her back on?
Not a problem. As the rap artists say, pass the mic. Here we go.
I'm not going to rap for you. Hello.
No rapping, please.
No.
So what have you found this is a poignant question, and you and I have discussed this issue, being females in this particular career field. I don't know what else to call it. Mm-hmm. But so what are some of the upsides and downsides of being a female author? And I will let you talk.
Thank you. And I'm glad you brought this up, because we have talked about it, and I mentioned to you earlier before we got on, let's talk about this, because I get asked this all the time. Why do I obscure my face? And I use a pen name as well. Shelby is not my real name. And I remember way back when we put this together, you had said to me, good job on doing that, because when your name is public and your face is public out there, you're inviting. I don't mind being public and all of that, but what is startling to me is there's creepy people in this world. And so if they only know me as Shelby, that's great, because there's a level of security that comes with that. Nobody, unless you really, really know me, you don't know my real name, you don't know my children, you don't know where I live, and there's security that comes with that. And you affirmed me when you said, good job on not using a real name, because that adds that level of security. And so I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm not trying to be a diva or anything like that. But I do have a family. I have children. I have personal security. And for those of you out there who are friendly to me and nice, I try to be just as friendly back. But and I've shown them to Glenn. I've shown my personal message box that I get, and you get them too. That the whole "hey baby baby" sorts of PMs, and it's like, you know what? If you want to get blocked by me instantly, that's what you do, because there's security with that, and it's a balance, yeah. So that's I'm trying to answer kind of a fan question there, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too. But I get that's a big question. Why do you do that? That's why safety, personal safety. I don't need to help somebody get to me. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that too, though.
No, it is one of those. I never thought about a pen name. I write under my initials, and everyone knows that. And I never thought about using a different picture, and I've had issues. This has been an issue. It's a learning curve. It's a huge learning curve, but at times it can be too late. Love answering fan emails, and I will always do that if there's anything, even an inkling. It's gotten that bad at times as a female, and we all have our buddies, our writer buddies that we talk to, and you're like, look at this, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So so if there's any inkling anymore, I just shut them down. They're out of there. I just don't need it. It's a huge waste of my time. Period.
And it's worrisome too. I'd rather shut it down and block that person in the media realm than even. It's a waste of time and it's a waste of my emotional energy. What is this person doing? I'm not gonna. Right. Yeah.
And even beyond being a waste of your time, it's very dangerous. I have
exactly.
had near me stalker issues, and there's police reports out there ready to go at a moment's notice. So it's a huge learning curve, and it's one thing that you and I talked about, and I've talked to a couple of other female authors who've also gone through the same thing. It can be very concerning because you're opening yourself up. You want to open yourself up to your fans so that you can have a dialogue with them. At the same time, these are not fans. These are not necessarily folks who are reading your books.
Right.
This is just, I hate to say it, but I think it's more like the bottom feeders.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that are taking time and energy and taking your time away from your fans.
Exactly. Oh, and I have to just jump in here. Joe Avery just commented, so good to hear that your next book is coming soon. Yes, it's coming soon, and Audible too. So yes, thank you. Joe is one of my great fans. He's one of the good guys. Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, that's one thing that Shelby and I have both dealt with, and we talk behind the scenes about it occasionally, because you need a buddy to be able to say, this is so frustrating. What would you do? That kind of thing. So it's great to have girlfriends to say, is this over the line, or am I overthinking this? But anyway, I have wonderful, great fans, and not taking away from any of that. So your next book, number 2 in the series, is going to be out when?
We picked a date, so we have much work to do. October 28th. That's a little bit later than I wanted to, but as you know, delays. So October 28th is when it's coming out, and I've just been in contact with in print, some sort of print form, October 28th. Very soon after that, an Audible version. I just talked to my narrator today. I emailed with her, not officially talked with her. And so Audible will be pretty soon after that. So it's exciting. The next few weeks are going to get a little bit hairy.
Yep. More sleepless nights, not just your fictional characters waking you up.
Exactly.
Yeah, more. And how many books are you planning in this series?
This is going to be, I will say this is a 3-book series for sure. There is a start and an end, and I know where the end is and all of that to book 3. I think, and this is one of those I'd almost like fan feedback on this. When I hit the end of book 3 and everyone's read them, is there a character that someone would like me to launch another book or do a side story on? and there's already in my mind, there's about a dozen characters like that. So I would love to, has people read them, and when they get to the end and they realize what characters were not fully developed, maybe that they want to hear more about, love to do that. I think that's what happens in a series when you have so many characters. You have to wrap up. Not all of them can, it ends up being 100-book series at that point, but what are those that they'd love to hear about, or hear more of? Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And Joe says a great Christmas present. Definitely. Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. There was one other thing that you did in this book series I have never seen anyone do. And when it's a difficult situation, right? So what do you do whenever you are a custodian parent and you have to make some kind of an agreement with the other parent when you have a child during a crisis situation? Never seen anyone touch that subject before, and you did it really well. You at least got a verbal agreement.
A very tenuous verbal agreement, exactly. And I'm going to tease everybody. That's going to play out in book 2 a lot.
I was hoping so.
Yeah, so you'll see more of that. But where my inspiration was from that, and people who've heard me on interviews before, I say this: over 50% of children born in this country are born to a single parent. So that means there's a lot of kids out there that have this other parent that is not their primary caregiver, the weekend visits, the custody agreements, and all of that. And in a crisis, you have to figure that out. You really do. And I go back to the riots in Portland when I'm going, okay, if I have to leave, how do I get my kids to safety?
If they're with them.
Yes, if they're with someone else. How do you do that? And so I don't know if I answered that really well in my book because my main character, Julie, kind of does a head fake, I think, a little bit. But maybe that's what you have to do. And I don't know if that I fully answered it, but I hope I at least opened the question. So yeah, I think it's something a lot of parents need to consider.
Yeah, it's a great, like Glenn, like we were talking about, it certainly gets you thinking about what you would do, or at least, it's a catalyst for you you did a wonderful job by bringing up some difficult situations that I've never considered or read about before.
Thank you.
So do you read a lot on your off time, or do you have an off time?
That's so hard. I don't read as much as I want. You know what? Because what I'm reading right now, and if people follow me on social media, I'm reading gardening books. I'm reading, oh, hi, Donna. I'm reading, I'm trying to figure out what to do with all these apples coming off a tree in my backyard. I'm a prepper. At my heart, I'm a prepper. So I need to read more dystopian sort of books, and I need to read more. So I'm kind of
when it comes to gardening, for some reason I flashed on James Howard Kunstler, World Made by Hand.
Mm-hmm.
Man, his world and how he described homesteading, basically, or the new homesteading, was just beautiful. He's a very descriptive writer. Donna Broussard is my cousin. Hi, Donna. So nice to see you here. Is there anything that you want to discuss that we haven't covered?
Yes, I will say
you
this.
Have a day job.
I do have a day job.
Go ahead.
Honestly, I think all of us are. My primary job is my kids, getting these little critters to adulthood. So, so there's that. But I will. I will say this one thing that's coming up. If you are in Washington State or Idaho, we talked about this prepping conference coming up in Sandpoint, Idaho. I forget the name of it. I'm bad. On September 21st and 22nd, Glen, Tate, and I will be in Sandpoint, Idaho, at the fairgrounds. Oh my gosh, what's the name of the county? Is it Kootenai? No, it's Boones Ferry County Fairgrounds. Washington Preparation in the Northwest Expo. I know I'm bad. I'm sorry. We're going to be speaking at that. So feel free, if you're in this area, look that up and come. I think you posted our websites, 299days.com. That's Glen's. Mine is agreatstate.com. I would encourage you, if you go on there, sign up for our newsletters, because then you get all these little newsy things like the prepping conference and things like that we're going to. And yeah, so our websites are great places to connect. And I hope I get to see a lot of folks here in Sandpoint in a week and a half.
You're going to get to see a lot of, if you've been in that area, and I have, you'll get to see huge community support there. You will definitely, it'll be fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. I was at one last year I will say this, in, oh my gosh, it was in Brosser. Yes. Eastern Washington folks, and Idaho folks, you got this prepping thing nailed down. I learn from you every time I go. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, they're the ones that emailed me, and I wasn't able to make it that weekend. I think Glen was there. It's funny how you get to meet your other writers, and I was like, darn, I could have met him.
Oh, darn.
Oh, well. But like I met Chris Weatherman at A-American, Chris Weatherman.
Yeah.
So we were all panel discussion in Salt Lake City. That is a huge one to go to, a big prepper convention. And he was doing his thing, but I was sitting next to him and he was braiding the sound cords. And I'm like, and they were trying to pass me the mic. It was hilarious. I'm like, can you not do that right now?
Exactly. There's Danielle. See, and here's a good example. Danielle Roundabout. She just joined. I see that. And I met her at a book signing for the first time. Gosh, it was in May. And Glen was with me at the time. And Glen and her go way back on the Jack Spearco forum from a few years ago. So yeah, so it's a community, and I love this because it's this sort of community that when a collapse happens, we'll know each other. We'll be able to reach out and take care of things. It'll be good.
Cool. So you've written the second book, and it will be out next month. Have you started on the third book?
The third book is almost done. So what I need to do now is I know it's done in my head. It's not done on paper. It's almost done on paper. So what I need to do is, honestly, in the next few days, some really final edits to book 2, and then not even blink and go and finish book 3, so that we can keep this momentum going. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And that's a very important, the momentum, because life gets in the way.
It does.
And you move it. So been there, done that. Okay, well, thank you, Shelby. I guess let's go back to Glen and see if he has any final words, because we only have a few more minutes.
All right, I'm going to hand it over
nice
to him.
Meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you, and hopefully I'll get to meet you in real life someday. I'm sure, and I'm going to count on that. So let me hand the microphone over to Glen.
Okay, bye.
All right, and hello.
Hi. We only have like maybe 5-10 minutes left. So I do have a different question for you. So how do you research for your books? You're pretty much in your location, right?
Yes.
Do you take research? Do you do anything like that for you?
Yeah, very minimal research. What I would do, I had 2 main sources of finding out information. One, just, Wikipedia and things. And for example, if there's something I didn't know, I would try to find out a little bit about it. But I had a secret weapon when it came to research, and that was the real Wes. Wes is a character in the book, and he's a real guy. His name in the books is Wes Marlin, and his name in real life is Wes Martin, because, see, I'm super creative. And anyway, but he's a friend of mine, and he is a volunteer for the Army Special Forces 6-week exercise they have in North Carolina, Robin Sage, where they get volunteers to be village members, and they simulate training indigenous forces and doing all kinds of really cool stuff. So he did that for a number of years. And my character, Special Forces Ted, I'd have a question. Well, how would a Special Forces guy running an indigenous group of fighters in an insurgency, how would he handle this situation? So I'd call Wes. So it was pretty easy to do. There wasn't a lot of research, because a lot of my story is about characters doing normal people things and things that I felt I knew something about. I obviously don't know any of that cool stuff, right? So it was that's how I researched it. I didn't spend a lot of time researching. It was more fact checking, and it was pretty minimal. So yeah, that's the answer to that. I love it though. It's fun doing the fact checking. I would find myself being very, very interested in whatever it was I was fact checking. And I'd have to tell myself, "Hey, get back to work. Quit goofing around on the internet."
Down the rabbit hole. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I have a quick question, and then Joe Avery has one. So, and I just forgot what I was going to ask you. Okay, never mind. We'll go to Joe's. Can you tell us a little about your new project? What are you working on right now?
I think I'm working with somebody on a book, and then I have another project called Pam Radio, and the book is 399 days, and somebody else is doing the first draft of it. Derek Grant, who's the publisher at Prepper Press, and it follows the 299 day. It's in the same time frame, but it's about the state of Maine. And one of the cool things about a lot of prepper novels actually is the realization, the acknowledgement, the conditions will be very different in different regions. And there's always, local politics and local, all kinds of economies and terrain and all sorts of things that vary. One size does not fit all. And so Derek is working on this about Maine, and I'm involved in some of the story development, some of the editing, and some of those sorts of things. So I haven't checked in with him recently on when that's coming out, but it'll be Derek Grant, with Glen Tate. And that's going to be really fun because you'll appreciate this, and Shelby got a good chuckle out of this. The cool thing about a project like that is you get all the creative, fun, cool stuff about story development, but you don't have to do all like the writing, right? The hard work. And so it's the best of both worlds, right? And that's fun. And so then the other project is called Pam with a P radio. It's not ham radio. It's Prepper amateur radio. I don't know a ton about amateur radio, but there are a lot of people out there, perhaps you included, where you sit and you think, oh my goodness, I don't need a new hobby. I don't need thousands of dollars of radio equipment. I don't have the time. I just need to talk to my neighborhood watch people, right? That's what I really need to do. That's what preppers need. So thinking of that, I thought, because I was going to train up my team, I'm the comms guy. I was like, okay, here's what you guys need to know. And I started thinking about all the stuff they need to know and how it would be presented to them, just the stuff they need to know and not all the skipping something off the ionosphere and talking to people in Greenland and with a spectro analyzer coagulator. Okay, I just made that up. But I'm
a ham reader, and I also did it in the military.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
Actually going to be.
Yeah, you were the.
But I also did it in the Air.
Okay. Well, then you were the comms person that everyone looked to, and you kind of had to tell them what they needed to know. So I came up with Pam, Prepper Amateur Radio, all the stuff you need to know and none of the stuff you don't. And it's going to be some flashcards on iPhone and Android, and it's what's the difference between VHF and UHF. It's not going to be any jargon, and it's going to be, okay, you're a prepper, preferably the one person on a team who's going to be tasked with learning comms and teaching everybody else. What do you need to buy? And, if you've got $100, what should you get to do like a neighborhood watch thing? And I'm very excited. I have 32 beta testers. That was great. Volunteers came out. So we're working on that. And I hope to have that out, December 1st is my goal. I just got an email a couple minutes before we came on the air from my app developer who said he's already got a prototype going. He just needs all the text to fill into it, which is fantastic. So that's going to be a cool thing, that it'll be low cost, get in people's hands. They can click on a link and there will be the package of stuff that I suggest they need, and that goes to an Amazon link, and people can get commsed up, which as a former military, communication operator, you would appreciate having everybody in a unit or a group actually knowing how to use stuff. And you don't have to know how to program them. You don't have to, that's the comms person. That's your former role. And so I thought that would be cool because what's that?
But
I couldn't hear you.
I don't remember a long time ago, and I don't remember half of it, but but I am, and I still have my little radio. So yeah.
There you go. So those are the main projects. Living life.
It would come back to, let's see, 5 more minutes. I was going to say that there is a huge. Are you a ham radio operator?
I am.
Just curious. Oh, cool. So in northern, in Kootenai County and Bonners Ferry, there's a huge group, a couple of them actually, up in that area. And you might want to connect with them. They may be totally interested in coming to the event there in Bonners Ferry.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, Amron, American Readout Radio Operators Network, is, I think, going to be involved informally. John Jacob Schmidt, I'm sure you know him. He's going to be working with me on it. He's got a little hurricane or something he's working on getting some emergency comms going for right now, so he's a little busy. But it's open source in the sense that I want all kinds of people to help me and contribute and do all that kind of thing, and then we can get it out to tons more people. So, that's one of the cool things about this community. The prepping community. Exactly, and the Second Amendment community for that matter. For the most part, everybody's cool, and we just want to help each other out. And I'm not used to that in my world of politics and lobbying and law. I'm not used to people being decent human beings. So that's kind of nice.
I know a couple of great lawyers, so it's good.
Good.
I mean, there's always great ones around. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, gosh, thank you for coming on. Is there where can everyone find your stuff? We have 3 minutes.
You bet. As Shelby mentioned,
so
299days.com, 299days.com. You can Google 299 days and you'll find our website. Sign up for the email that we put out. Social media, 299 days, parentheses, the book. And then Shelby has a greatstate.com and Shelby Gallagher on Facebook, Shelby Gallagher author on Facebook. And we populate mostly Facebook stuff. Some stuff gets to Twitter and Instagram, but I'm super old, so those aren't my things. I'm like an old person, Facebook old.
Yeah, same here. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming on, and please tell Shelby I said, thank you very much. So
absolutely,
we'll have to do it again sometime. Hope to meet you guys sometime soon.
Oh, we'll meet in person. Thank you for having us on. This is great. This is really neat to be on your show.
Cool. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Bye.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.